Hi, my name is Marissa Lamagna, and in 2008, I started Bay Area Green Tours. During the last 12 years, I've had the privilege of learning from so many change makers, thought leaders, and what I like to call solutionaries all around the Bay Area. As a result of the pandemic, we had to stop doing tours. In some ways, it's a silver lining because now we're able to connect to some of the people that we've learned from and share them outside of our backyard with people from all over the world. Bay Area Green Tours is a small grassroots organization. After the pandemic, people came to help us pivot and reinvent ourselves. I'd like to begin to compensate them as we continue to look for new ways to sustain our work. We appreciate it if you could make a donation, share our programming, and come back for the next time for Solutionaries Speak. In 2019, I did a permaculture training with Vital Cycles with Lydia Nielsen and Anne Frywald. I learned so much from her. She is our moderator for Solutionaries Speak. I'll turn it over to Anne now. And thank you for joining. Please share this video and stay tuned for our new programming.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Marissa. I love that intro. It's wonderful to be here. So today we are welcoming for our second Solutionary Speak Talk in 2021, Doniga Markegard of Markegard Family Grass Fed. Doniga, if you want to pop on screen, that would be great. Hello, wonderful to have you. So we want to also today thank Beneficial Bank for sponsoring us, as well as the Silicon Valley Foundation for funding for this programming, which makes it possible for us to do this great work. And so Doniga, we got to meet in person, right? Even during these strange times back all the way in July 21st of 2020. And we came out to your beautiful space just south of Half Moon Bay to just check out all of the animals that you have in your family and just how you do things. And we made it with the intent of being a virtual tour, so people that could no longer be coming to your site could actually see what you're up to and the ways that you are using regenerative land management. So we made a little video, and we're going to start off just with that to give everyone a context of actually where you are today, right? Is this where you are today? Is where we were when we met?
Yeah, that's great.
So we're going to start off with that video. Just give me 1 second while I share my screen. And so everyone, this is Doniga Markegard and her family and the beautiful land that she tends, prairie lands that she tends, actually around the Bay Area, but we'll talk about that later.
Hi, I'm Doniga Markegard, and we're here in the Tanitas Creek watershed, and our family raises grass-fed beef, lamb, pasture-raised pork, and chicken. And we do this through regenerative agriculture practices. Our philosophy in grazing and grass-fed is to mimic nature because, Mother Nature really has things right and has a way of regenerating and keeping things in balance. And we produce food that's nutrient dense. So not only are we producing food for thousands of families across the Bay Area, but it's food that we can feel really good about. The animals are treated well, the environment is taken care of, where there's actually more life produced with every life we take. When we use the term grass-fed, we mean grass-fed all the way through the whole life cycle. So these animals never enter confinement. They never enter a feedlot. They are not fed grains. They're finished on these native coastal prairie grasslands. We have chefs and consumers that, just embrace the flavors of the meat. Here we're right on the ocean, so we have this incredible salt air and the fog. It's almost like when you're eating the meat, that flavor of the ocean is being transferred to the flavor of the meat. So when I feed my family, they have so much energy. We're all super healthy, and our customers will say the same thing. So this is Quince Markegard, and her chores in the morning and the evening are what?
They're to feed and water the baby chickens.
I do the brooder, Quill does the pasture chickens, and Larry does the pigs.
When we started this grass-fed operation 15 years ago, grass-fed was barely even a known term. And now, in the middle of a pandemic, people can have the connection to nature through us, and they know that. And they know they can have a direct connection to their food security and to their health. I see the Bay Area and the people of the Bay Area that we can take responsibility and make some big changes during this time. Let's reinvent the food system. It's gonna take consumers saying, no, I am not gonna buy industrial raised meat. I'm gonna buy from a local regenerative farmer or rancher that I have a relationship with, and I know where my food's coming from. There's so many reasons why we can, here right in the Bay Area, make big changes. And we have all the resources right at our fingertips, not leaving it all up to the farmers and ranchers. It takes a village, it takes a community, it takes everyone stepping up and doing their part.
Yeah, we're going to start our conversation, Doniga and I. So what a great video, Doniga. It was such a joy to come out and see you in action, and with your children, and gosh, all the animals. I think the father daughter dog team on the ranch was really inspiring and beautiful as well. So we wanted to just start off by presencing when we came out to make that film, it was July 21st of 2020. And gosh, I even get a little teary just thinking about it. And within less than a month, California, and especially, the CZU fires started then around the 16th of August. So, we had plans to come back and do more filming, and all of that got really clearly put to the side, as all of our communities were really, really impacted by wildfires and mountain fires. And so, we talked about this and just wanting to really presence what's happened since that video was made with you, your family, and your community. Can you speak to that just to start off?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, when we did that video, it had been a few months into the pandemic. So, despite the, the horrific events of the illnesses and the deaths that we were experiencing, I always strive to look at the silver lining of things. And so I was very hopeful during that time, because we were seeing the biggest consumer shift that I have seen since we've started selling grass-fed beef in the last 16 years, and so I was really seeing people start to come back to the land and grow food. And so during that time of that video, I was hopeful that we would get through this pandemic and that we would come out the other side sort of reinventing the relationship we have with each other, with the land, with the food system. And then if you would have fast forwarded a month and come and visited me, or even seen a picture of me, my face was swollen from multiple bee stings and inflammation because I just was going nonstop, a solid month of crisis following the CZU lightning complex, plus fires up in the North Bay. And yeah, it was really intense, evacuating 300 head of livestock. And I think that, we don't need to dwell too much on, just how intense and how much damage was done with those fires. However, we do need to remember, we need to kind of put ourselves back there on a regular basis and remember how we felt. Remember that it impacted all of us, that we couldn't send our kids outside. We had to seal our windows and we couldn't breathe the air. And then also take action to get into right relationship with the land. And remember too, we're doing so much work for growing our own food and figuring out how to sequester large amounts of carbon. But we have to remember that 2 weeks of those mega fires is equivalent to the amount of pollution of all the cars and trucks driven in California for 1 year. So, it's to everyone's benefit that we put that as a priority and that we get into right relationship with the land. And I'm happy to hear of efforts. I was just on the phone this morning with Edward Willey, a fire ecologist. I encourage all of you to follow his work and to support the work that they're doing up there in Sonoma County with the Cultural Conservancy. And just a lot of work to be done, but it's lessons that are available to us. And we can incorporate these lessons into our lifestyles and into teaching our future generations.
Wonderful. Yeah, I love that you're connecting with Edward Willey. We also have, good friend.
Yeah, you should have him on as a speaker.
Exactly. I was just thinking that, like, there we go. So, and then can you speak to a little bit, I think last time we spoke, we had a conversation about, practices that that the regenerative practices that you were already using perhaps helped mitigate the impacts of the fires, but also the recovery, right? So the way in which that you are actually engaged with tending the land with your animals and with the livestock has a profound impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to sort of start off with, honoring the indigenous knowledge, and we're on Ramaytush Ohlone territory here in, where we are on this coastal terrace prairie, and, so many different lessons that we can learn. And, we kind of fast forward to now looking at, how can we as humans get close to that relationship? I mean, I'm so humbled by the people who lived here and how much knowledge and instinctual connection they had, that I feel like I'm just barely a very small sliver of learning in my journey of learning that relationship that the indigenous people had with this land. And the best thing I can do is observe nature, do everything I can to immerse my senses and observe the patterns, get to know each species like that species were my relative, and then apply certain tools and techniques and again observe. So I think with grazing animals and fire, it's a key tool, just like prescribed burning. So When we look at where the lightning fires started, if they started on land that had been grazed, where the fuel load had been reduced, where ranchers had relationships to that land, they were able to access it, they had knowledge of place, those fires were able to be contained. Like an example is the Meyer fire that started out on the coast just north of Jenner. And we didn't really hear about it much because it was contained by the firefighters and by the local ranchers, because it started on a grassland. And they were able to cut fire breaks. The land had been grazed. And if that land had belonged to, say, State Park, which doesn't have an active grazing program, that fire probably would have burned all through Cazadero and met up with the other fire, up by Healdsburg and that area. So it would have been deadly and devastating if it had not started on a ranch. So, we just need to sort of look at all of these scenarios. The CZU fire, we were looking at just little campfire smoke coming up from the fires, and standing there with CAL FIRE and them saying, we can't get to it. There's no roads. It's too dense, right? And that's a result of our relationship and our lack of knowledge of place and knowledge of how to tend the wild.
Beautiful. Yeah, Doniga, it's so powerful. So you said that you're just on the beginning of your journey, right? To fully come into, how even to further better your tending of the land, the prairie lands and the livestock. And I wanted to go a lot more into the fire, but just looking at the time, and you could maybe choose, but I wanted to bring up your book and actually your journey, right? So Doniga, among so many other things, is an author and has written this amazing book called Dawn Again, which I've read and reread a few times. And she also, for young people, she has Wolf Girl, which my daughters loved, teenagers, but just, there's so much richness and information and perspective in your book, Doniga. And just speaking of your journey, can you just sort of touch on some of your key turning points were? I I read the book, they're in there, but what would be valuable for people that are listening on the call, on this Solutionary Speak call today?
Yeah, well, in my youth, I was always sort of questioning why did I need to just go into school and follow the normal routes? And I think many of us probably that are here can relate to that. And I grew up in a rural area in Washington, and just the times that are so close to my heart are those simple things like going camping or going down to the river, being able to ride my horse. And it's kind of like those are those memories when you're completely immersed in the natural world that really stick with you throughout your life. So I was striving for more of that intuitive connection that helped me find that sort of internal peace. So through my book, I share my own journey because I feel like everyone can relate to a part of that journey, because everyone is part of nature. Everyone can remember those times, maybe when they were a little kid and, they were on the lake shore or at the ocean, and you remember just that feeling of aliveness. And so, that's why I wrote my book, was so that people could relate to how important the connection to place is, and how it's okay to raise our kids connected connected to nature and maybe going against the norm, because, you know, at the time of writing my book, there wasn't any books about women who had sort of gone into the wilderness and survived and then come out the other side and applied that to a career. And it was really my time tracking wolves in the wilderness in Idaho that helped me internalize what I'm doing today with moving the large herds of animals through the grassland and improving life in the process, improving biodiversity above ground and below ground. We see an increase of threatened grassland birds, where in other parts of the state, those same birds are on the decline. We see an increase of perennial native bunch grasses. So, you know, what if you do something small and you see good results, then you do it a little bigger the next time, and you just sort of expand out from there.
And can you speak actually to that place? We'll come back to the book again, but around movement. We had such a great conversation about that last time we spoke about, humans' humans' role in moving, animals on the landscape, right? And the power of that. Can you speak a little bit to that? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So as regenerative ranchers, we move the animals, and then in turn, those animals move the plants, and the plants move the soil. So if you sort of narrow down some of the key differences between regenerative agriculture and industrial agriculture, is there's never stagnancy. And you can relate that to your own body as well, because the health of our bodies are directly linked to our activities and the health of what we put in our bodies. And we all know that if we're stagnant, our health declines. And it's the same thing with nature. If nature is stagnant, then carbon actually releases into the atmosphere. And that's in the form of oxidation. So stagnation leads to that oxidation and desertification. Stagnation in the forest leads to mega fires, because if we're not going to move those fuel loads by doing controlled prescribed burns, or bringing animals in, or going out there ourselves and harvesting and pruning and digging and being a part, then nature's going to come in and say, okay, humans, you didn't do your job to move all that fuel, so I'm going to move that fuel, because that forest or that landscape needs to be healthy. And in order to be healthy, you need to move.
Beautiful. Wonderful. And then again, back to that. So what people that are on the call or listening to this later, what would be the most powerful ways for individuals to take what you're saying and put it into action, either in advocacy or things they can do themselves to be regenerative?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a few ways that you can begin to move for your food and bring back that movement culture is, one, build your personal soil. And you just have to remember, every single time you plant a seed, and every single green living plant is drawing down carbon. So you can be part of the solution by growing things, and we should have green growing things in as many places as possible. Like I said in the video, don't leave it up to the farmers and ranchers to be the only ones who are promoting that carbon cycle. We can all grow green living things and build the soil in the process, and connect to your own personal soil, because by being in touch with that soil, like, at the beginning of the pandemic, I was really kind of freaked out that, oh my gosh, there's all this sterilization and hand sanitizer and washing hands. It's like, what happened to good dirt? And, there was all this, so much momentum that had been built about, let kids get dirty and let them eat dirt. And it's like, that just got wiped off the internet immediately, starting the pandemic. So hopefully we can start to bring back that healthy relationship to good dirt. And because that then in turn increases our gut microbiome. And, there's been some really great studies with this, but one is that if there's actually microorganisms in the soil that improve the levels of serotonin in your brain. So it makes you happier, right? So putting your hands in the dirt creates happiness. And, during these times, we could all use more of that. And it's these simple things that we can do to build our own personal soil. Connect with soil savvy farmers and ranchers. Farmers markets have been going great as essential services during the pandemic. Out open air markets, it's so nice to see that those have been well and thriving. And I see people coming, and that's like their big event of the week, and they love it, and they connect to that food, and they talk with the farmers and ranchers and learn where their food's coming from. And so that's another way. Get out on a Saturday or a Sunday and walk to the farmer's market and carry your food and support those that are working hard for regenerative practices. And then, also just act for the future generations. We just like we can't forget the mega fires and how that impacted us all. We can't forget the youth that hit the streets in 2019 and in record numbers to stand up for the other generations, to not leave them with such a mess. And so every action that we take had those future generations in mind. And remember that, they're still there. Even though they may be behind a Zoom screen, they are still there. And we need to remember that that's our responsibility to leave things better than we found it.
Yeah. I was just rereading it today, you have it in your book, The Permaculture Directive, right, by Bill Mollison, was to make the ethical decision to take responsibility for our own existence and that of our children, right? So it's that responsibility and that commitment and that visioning forward with regard to the land and everyone. It's really beautiful. Okay, everyone, so we're going to grow food, we're going to go to the farmers markets, and we're going to really see our place in this beautiful web of life moving forward, all to the best we can. So, and to that end, what I also really appreciated in your journey was, because this was similar to mine, talking about diet and like how we can, different choices we can make in our lives. So not just about where we buy our food or what we buy, but what we're eating. I'm going to go back to the gut and say that another thing that people don't understand is a healthy gut. 95% of the serotonin in our bodies is created in our guts. And we're reliant on microbes in our gut to actually create that. And a lot of people don't understand. So you actually, not only are you what you eat, but what you eat is affecting your emotions in a profound way, as Doniga started to presence. So back to our sort of diets, everybody, it seems like we're coming at the last few years with a lot of people, oh, I'm paleo, I'm raw food, I'm vegan. There's a huge vegan wave. I teach at different colleges. And so you went through a similar journey, and I went through that journey, and I love what you landed at. And I'd love to just take a minute to talk about it, because it has to do with how we can all do this more. And that's about being a regenetarian. Do you want to just speak to what regenitarianism is and how you got there, and just, your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that the diet choices, as we've seen, can create division. And the last thing we need right now is division. And the last thing we need is, vegans versus meat eaters, or this diet versus that diet. And, what we need to realize is that just like every spot in nature is unique and has its own set of ecological principles and ecological diversity and ways that life functions together. Each individual human body is different, and their ancestry is different, and their diet of place is different, and that we need to sort of connect to our whole being and what we're doing, not only the food, but the fiber and everything we consume, and ask the question, is this choice regenerating life, or is it degenerating life? Is it leaving more life with every life we take? Because the act of eating is killing. And so what is it that we can do to create more life with every life that we take? And it's for me, it's really common sense basic, is that you look at nature and everything's eats or is eaten, and how can we enhance the functioning of, whether it's our agriculture system, or our own way of preparing food. How can we enhance that life?
Beautiful. Yeah, I love what you said. It's so true that we do not need divisiveness, especially about what we're eating, but really if we can make choices that are regenerative for the land, for our communities, for individuals, right? So really taking
Yeah. And it really takes an ecological understanding. And that's sort of what, we started with in this conversation, is that it takes that, having that time where you've immersed in nature enough so that you understand that everything is interconnected in this whole beautiful web of life. And that once you come to that, you can't be told that kind of thing. It's like you have to understand it yourself. You have to essentially do the dirt time, where you have your hands in the dirt, and get out there and internalize that.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, feel it fully, right, in our bodies.
Yeah.
So to that end, so we've been talking about children, we've been talking about young people. We saw your beautiful children in the video that we started off with today. And I know when last we spoke, we really talked about the importance of engaging, children, young adults in the process of regenerative strategies, practices, regenitarianism, or, growing food, being really accustomed with their food. So I want to speak to that, but I also just want to presence again what we talked about, what you just mentioned, the need to actually do the dirt time. And, I just recently read that our generation of children right now spend less time outdoors than any other generation before them. And that it's literally on average in the United States, 4 to 7 minutes per day of unstructured outdoor play, compared with 7.5 hours of indoor and on an electronic device. So to me, that feels like a huge crisis for our society and for our young people. And I love, though, how everything that you are speaking to and weaving in this talk are always, how can we just put our arm around our young people and just, do the dirt time with them?
Yeah.
Could you speak to that a little bit, and how you do that actually within your family and in your practices?
Yeah. So you saw our daughter Quince, and she takes ownership of things and takes pride in her work. And so it's like, if you give them responsibilities and they understand, like, if they don't follow through, then there is real consequences, and the consequences aren't mom getting you in trouble. The consequences are that animal won't have food or water, right? You have that sort of responsibility from a very young age, that you internalize and you feel it, like, oh gosh, yeah, if I mess up, or yeah, that was a result of me not taking responsibility. And then the unstructured time outside and just time outside is so important. And yeah, I think we had this discussion a little bit before the call of like, okay, what is sort of like something easy to do with your kids versus something that you can really consciously think through and provide these mentoring, sort of lifelong learning opportunities for them. So like, you compare, the easy thing would be, okay, let's go to the park and let's pick a destination point and let's stay on the trail and let's hike to point A and then hike back to point B, right? And then which is a lot of how people's outdoor time is spent, and it's better than nothing, right? And then there's the other sort of conscious, you're going out and maybe you bring a gathering basket and a field guide of wild edibles, and you ask a lot of questions and you go off trail. Shh, don't tell, don't tell the rangers, right? You go off trail and you explore and you wander and you climb trees and you gather things and you pick flowers and you actually integrate with the life around you. And I think that's where there's I joked around on a recent call that I did. It's like, my kids, they learned to use machetes from a really young age. Like they learned the safety things, and they also can use chainsaws and power tools and all that kind of stuff. And so it's like, gosh, there's a lot of underbrush in some of these areas. Like, what if every kid could learn how to use a machete? And we said, hey, we've got too much fuel load, just get out there with the machete and clear these areas, and or teach them how to gather willow to make baskets. And in that process of integrating with the land and the species, you're also reducing the amount of fuel for fire. I mean, it would take pretty much every kid in California to be doing this in a conscious way. But they would learn in the process. They would very quickly learn how to identify poison oak.
Exactly. What a wonderful vision, right? Just that I think anyone can do with kids out. Yeah. So go on your hike and the gathering basket. I love it. And the field guides. And yeah, maybe we don't all go off trail, but respectfully and consciously, right? It's not about whacking things around. It's about observing, right?
Yeah.
It's about being with our surroundings. Yeah.
Yeah.
So beautiful. So I know here at Bagot, we're starting a farm to school program where we're going to be doing virtual tours of being led by children who, perhaps your children, Doniga, and some other people around the Bay Area with children who have their own farms, and that the children will be giving the tours and leading the tours, and that those tours will be shared with students either virtually or in their classrooms whenever we're able to go back, to really bring the farms to the schools. And then when we can all do it again, bring the children back out into the farms. And I love that idea of I know people are probably like, ooh, a machete, but kids learn stuff. They're really quick learners. And if you think of all of these kids spending 7.5 hours every day on a device right now for school, for the large part, like there's a need to actually, for their mental health and their emotional health, to get outdoors. So what are the really creative ways that we can do that? I love that. So let's see. So I think those are all of the questions we had, but I did want to just again mention your book, Dawn Again, if you all want a great read with just a wonderful story that just has so much in it about animal tracking and permaculture and regeneration and regenerative practices. If you haven't already seen Kiss the Ground, which Doniga was also a huge part of, it's a wonderful documentary about building our topsoil and carbon sequestration, highly recommend. And do you have anything else you want to add or share with people on the call today, Doniga?
I think it's just really time for all of us to stop trying to tame the wild, whether it's that wild within us or the wild, outside of our door. That really, let's tame that. Let's tend, instead of tame, let's tend that wild within, and tend the wild outside as well, and get into that relationship with all life.
Wonderful. That's a great note to end on and open up to questions. So we're going to open up to questions from folks, and you can enter your questions in the chat. So let's see. I'm just gonna, I love that. Yeah, someone said tend, not tame. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? And like really don't, yeah, I love again that the tend, not tame, our inner wild and our outer wild. And actually, I think you made the point earlier that we need to do one in order to do the other actually really well. So yes, that resonated. People know where we can find your book.
You can find my book anywhere books are sold. So your favorite bookstore or online retailer. It's also available on Audible as an audiobook. So that's always great. I mean, this is the time of year where I can't read books. So my books are audios because I can move while I listen. So, yep.
And let's see, people agreeing about dirt time. Oh, Julia. Oh, thank you, Julia. Let me just, you want to unmute yourself and ask a question? If it's possible. There you go.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, it's such an honor. Thank you so much. Anne, is it Anne or Annie?
It's Anne.
Anne, thank you so much for having. And Doniga? Doniga.
Doniga,
okay, great. So I want to acknowledge you for really being who you are and just really connecting to what is so needed now and for future generations. And thank you for that. And, when I was a kid growing up in Colorado, I had a lot of connection to nature, and I saw how Colorado was being developed. And in my backyard, I was connected to road runners and all kinds of cats and things like that. And there weren't wolves, unfortunately. I think those were gone. But later on, I did some projects, and I'm just curious, like we talk about regeneration, regenerative agriculture, and then the wild, and bridging that gap. And how do you see step by step that process from our point of view? Like, because you're in it, you're immersed in it, right? So it's actually supporting, you and what you're up to in your vision. But what are the other things like we could actually start to disrupt or interrupt in our own life, do you think? And definitely food is one of them. Yeah.
So are you here in the Bay Area?
Yeah. And I'd also like to come and visit your farm, and there might be other people on this call that would like to visit. And if you have farm tours, I'm there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, pre-COVID, our farm tours were so popular. I mean, I never wanted to turn anybody away. And it got to the point where we just had to do sort of back-to-back tours because they were so popular. People have that longing to connect to their food source. And, I think, but being part of this call is a good first step. I mean, I think that I'm always, looking at the farmer, food consumer, chef, home cook relationship, and really promoting that. And the amount of people that are cooking at home, I think is a huge benefit. I mean, I really do feel for the restaurants that have struggled. However, people need to bring back some of those skills. And so many of those skills have been lost. And so, I try to, like say, a lot of times I'll send my kids off to grandma's to learn how to can and learn how to make jam and, just these sort of basic skills that our grandparents knew. It's like, what did your grandparents know? What kinds of practical skills did they know that you want your children to know? Maybe it skipped a few generations, but it doesn't have to continue, right? We can bring some of that back. And I write about my Grammy in the book, and she was just this, my great grandparents were homesteaders in Montana, and they had all of these amazing skills. And that was her quality of life, was being outside, and she just lit up like a Christmas tree when she talked about growing up on the homestead. And so I think those are the kinds of things that each of us can bring back into our own lives, and then it's going to help everybody. It's going to help the farmers, it's going to help the planet, it's going to help our own well-being.
Great, wonderful, Doniga. So we do have a couple questions. Thank you, Julia. Julia, for your question.
Thank you.
Yeah, so here's one from Mona. She said, oh, and then we'll get to you, Marissa. We learn things every day. What are some new things that you've recently learned that feed the path you are on?
Well, I'm really interested in learning more about our relationship with fire, and how, and I'm even like getting back into fire dancing a little bit to just sort of feel this, feel the fire energy, and because I'm a strong believer that everything happens for a reason, and we were heavily impacted by the CZU fire, and I'm not going to just let that go unnoticed. That it was, I had watched the other people really have these horrific experiences in the Camp Fire and in the North Bay fires. And it was like, I think I needed to experience that so that I could then figure out my role within that. So I think, I have a lot to learn there about, the fire ecology here in California, and really what we can do. And it really just goes back to, I want to continue to try to learn as much from the indigenous people as possible. And, especially the elders, whenever there's elders that are available and I can bring them gifts and I can sit with them, or have my children sit with them. I mean, that was where I learned so much in my youth. Was I was adopted by a Lakota holy man, an elder, and those lessons and those values that he passed on to me, were really changed my life, and really saved my life. So I think that that's really, like I said, I've so much to learn, especially here in California. It was so incredibly complex. And recently it's been amazing because the fires have uncovered more sites where the indigenous people had like these incredible open areas with grinding stones and shell mounds, and just incredible, just sacred places that are still sacred, right? Even if the relationships aren't there, they're still sacred places.
Wow, beautiful. Marissa, we're coming to you. There's a couple of questions in the chat, but I see your hand.
I can go last. That's fine.
Okay. Let's see. People just want to know where they can get your produce or your grass-fed products. Doniga, do you have a place?
Yeah. And then there's one private question here from my kid's garden teacher too.
Just you? Oh, good. Well, we'll take that one.
Yeah, I'll read that one in a minute. So yeah, you can look up our website. You can order online to pick up through, mainly the peninsula. So we're at the College of San Mateo, we're at the Sunnyvale Farmers Market, we're at California Ave, Palo Alto, and we have delivery locations, and we do some home deliveries. We have a certain range. So if you're ever on the coast, you can always just pick up right at our ranch gate too. That's super easy. Yeah, and then so Mona Urbina, who's the garden teacher here in Pescadero, La Honda, and works with Pie Ranch, she says, I really miss playing with your kids in the school kitchen and the garden. I always learn profound things from my students because of their clarity and honesty about things and life. What have your children taught you? And yeah, I really appreciate that comment that, there is so much that the kids can teach us. And as my kids are getting older and getting towards teenage years, it's like, sometimes I'm in awe, like when I work with them, how connected they are in their body. Like I watch my son work with cattle in the corral, and it's like he just gets into this zone. And so I think we can all learn that, we can all tap into that zone. Athletes are really good at it. And, people that are, work with horses a lot. It's like, you got to just get rid of all that junk, like, the thinking and the self-doubt and the questioning, and just like go all in it. So that's what I can learn from my kids.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Mona.
Thank you for presencing that. Yeah, my daughters are the same. They don't have even quite the life of the ranch that your children have, but yeah, the more time they spend in the garden and working with their hands, they see things from a completely different lens and are able to make connections that I don't make necessarily because I'm an adult and I'm already in it so far. So
Yeah.
So how about Marissa? Do you want to go?
Yeah, actually, it's a good time to follow up on that because I grew up in Midtown Manhattan in New York City, and Central Park was the place I could go, and I planted carrots, and I went up. Luckily, I had the opportunity to spend 2 months every summer in Maine, where we cooked on solar ovens. We paddled canoes for 2 weeks. We were really off the grid. And I feel so grateful. Even if you live in a city, you can be part of a garden program at your school, like you just mentioned. Just having that connection, whether you live in a city, there's always a park nearby or a lake or something. It's not just having to live on a ranch or a farm. And that saying, I want to put a little pitch here. Before COVID, we took people to Doniga. She's hosted us before. So we will let you know when we can do that again, and we'll all come together again in person and do that tour. So we'll let you know when that window opens up again, because and not only that, she has the most beautiful view over all of that video we did on a very cloudy day. And when I see it, I think, I wish we did it when it was green. It's really a spectacular place and a wonderful host. And you could come home with bags of food.
Yes, and bones for bone broth, and things for nutrient-rich foods. Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. Thanks for presencing that, Marissa. So here's a question. Juan David Mary says, I'd love to be in a stewardship or a volunteer experience in full immersion. Are there any places that you can recommend, mainly to learn regenerative agriculture, and then same as Joel Salatin's programs and things? That's the question for you.
Yeah. I mean, I was at the same place, and that's what brought me to California 20 years ago. Was I wanted that full immersion experience, and it happened to be this at the same time that a good friend, mutual friend of ours, Penny Livingston and mentor, was starting the Regenerative Design Institute. And so this was 20 years ago when nobody was really talking regenerative. And so Penny was so passionate that this is what we need to start talking about is, forget about sustainable. We don't want to sustain things. We need to regenerate things. And any of you who have had the pleasure of meeting Penny and feeling her energy is like, yeah, you can't help but just jump on board and like dive in. And so yeah, that was really amazing to be able to have that immersion experience with Penny. We helping her build gardens all over the Petaluma area and out in Bolinas, and just sort of spread that love of permaculture across the landscape. So I haven't been in that sort of world for so long that I wouldn't be the best person to ask, but maybe Marissa or Lydia might know of that full immersion. Like, yeah, Joel Saladin does have an internship. It's specific if you want to learn that, very specific form of livestock agriculture, which I visited his farm, and it's incredibly diverse. Nature is functioning very well. And he's producing huge amounts of food. But if you want to do more like polyculture or orchards, it just sort of depends on what, really what you're looking for.
Also, I mean, the way I met Anne and Lydia here, they were my teachers. I took their Vital Cycles permaculture class. So we got to work on a lot of projects together and created a whole community. And that's how Anne is here. So that's another way. And I know some farmers, will also host people to come and volunteer. And they have work parties to learn. I know Pie Ranch has monthly work, or used to have monthly work parties. So I think the more you could be connected and be mentored by people, the better it is for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful, great question. So maybe we can find something, maybe we'll send that out. And then also a question, when you started the farm 15 years ago, how did you take the step and what were your biggest challenges?
Yeah, everything was a challenge. And again, it's like I had definitely had a leg up, and it was still a huge challenge to transition. I was interested in holistic management, happened to move in next door to a rancher who was very ecologically minded, whether he really knew it or not. He was very intuitively connected to the land and the livestock, and that's how his father raised him to be. And so we ended up marrying, and then quickly worked to transition his cattle herd to 100% grass-fed and direct market, instead of sort of, the typical thing when you see cattle grazing out on the land in California. They're all sort of feeding into the industrial feedlot model. So sort of like, a prerequisite to marriage was like, let's cut ties with industrial ag. Let's let's ban feedlots. So, and it's like, okay, I have no clue how to do that, but go for it. So that sort of began a very challenging journey of going against the grain and figuring out how to do everything from scratch with no help and a lot of barriers. So there's a lot of barriers. It's very expensive to then go from just doing a certain specific life cycle of the animal to the whole life cycle. And you have to get a whole lot more acreage and work with different processors, work with different regulations that, if you were just a rancher, you wouldn't have to do. So yeah, the challenges are endless, but I try not to focus too much on that because I don't want to discourage people. Because for us, if we started to add up how much labor we've spent on this business, or if we actually had a business mind going into it, or a background, or even knew how to work a spreadsheet, we probably, or had that even in our frame of reference at all as our decision making, we wouldn't have gotten into it. So we just dove right in, and 15, 16 years later, we're running a successful direct market business, but it's been a long journey.
Beautiful. And what a journey, right? Wonderful, Doniga. Well, we're at 1 o'clock. We can stay on and maybe get a couple more questions, but just for anybody who might have to leave, we just want to thank you, Doniga, for sharing your time and day with us, and for everyone who joined us on the call and signed up. Again, we want to thank the Silicon Valley Foundation and Beneficial Bank for sponsoring us for this programming. And we also want to let everybody know that our next Solutionaries Speaks is going to be on May 13th, and we're going to be featuring Javier Zamora. And if you're intrigued, then you'll be getting that through you can go visit our website and check out our next newsletter. And with just, again, so much gratitude, and really looking forward to coming back out, Doniga, and seeing you again, and continue the filming and the tours. Yeah, we'll be in touch. Okay. Thanks, everyone.